Hi again, everyone. My name is Michelle Wilson, and I'm here with my colleague Esther Jackson, and we'll be talking a little bit about our forthcoming publishing ethics module as part of the Library Publishing Coalition.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for letting me join remotely. I'm so excited to be a part of this day. So today we're going to talk about ethics in publishing, introducing that concept fairly broadly. Then we're going to talk about the Library Publishing Coalition, what the organization is, what it does. And then we're going to dive into the ethics module that Michelle and I have developed, how to use it as an administrator and how to use it as a student journal staffer. And then we'll end with some time for Q&A. So you can see Michelle in person. I'm your friendly ghost in the machine. Michelle and I have the same title, but we work at two different institutions, and we have worked together at Columbia University as well.
So what are ethics? Ethics are a communal framework for good practice. The concept of ethics is that it establishes trust by putting forward a set of professional principles that guide people's behavior within a community. And there is a bit of a difference between ethics and morals, which is a sort of individual sense of right and wrong, can be impacted by one's upbringing, sort of religious or philosophical convictions, whereas ethics represent a professional consensus. So within the realm of publishing, we have certain principles that we use to guide our behavior as a group. So ethics help us to define what good and bad behavior is within our society or as a community, and they help to provide a framework for reporting and responding to misconduct as it's defined by that ethical framework.
All right. So the Library Publishing Coalition. So Michelle and I are both members of something called the Library Publishing Coalition, or LPC, which you all might have come across at some point in your studies. This is an independent community-led membership organization, so it's not associated with a particular university or other organization. And it's really, it exists essentially to help folks who are running library publishing programs or working in library publishing programs with different topics that are of interest to them and necessary for them to learn about for their work. So it facilitates collaboration. It actively engages other organizations in the space, and its overall goal is to strengthen library publishing programs. So the library publishing curriculum is a set of courses that the library publishing there are two LPCs. So the Library Publishing Coalition has created the library publishing curriculum, and it's a series of workshops that were created by different professionals who are working in library programs, library publishing programs on different topics. So it's meant to be really accessible to anyone who wants to learn about publishing. And while it's written for an audience that is librarians or people working in library publishing, it's really useful to anybody who's working in publishing or studying publishing. So these are the four modules that are available now. And Michelle and I are working on, or we have worked on, a new module to add to this list of modules. Okay, so the module that we're working on, as you might have guessed, is about publishing ethics. So this is one of a set of 5 new and updated modules that are listed here.
What is an ethics module? So the goal here is to create a resource for folks who want to develop policies related to ethics for their publication. So all of the module topics that we were just showing on the last slide are part of a revision to the LPC's, the Library Publishing Curriculum's set of resources on policy development. And so the idea is to help highlight and define and explain the major topics within publishing ethics, provide a sort of background and information for those who might not know that much about what the community consensus is around the nature of behavior and the frameworks that we have in that area, and then to provide straightforward and actionable advice to library publishers or editors, anybody who's working on publications on how they can develop policies and the workflows and sort of internal procedures that flow from those policies that would allow them to enact more ethical behavior within their publications. So publishing ethics is a wide-ranging area. There are a lot of things that sort of fit under the umbrella of what might be considered ethics, because this touches on all of the areas in which we're thinking about organizing people's behavior and thinking about structuring policies that guide behavior and also allow us to respond to allegations of misconduct. And so our publishing ethics module includes all of these different topics. So we are talking about peer review, how we handle allegations of misconduct, how post-publication review, including the institution of retractions for materials that may be determined to be false or infringing or have other issues with them, how conflicts of interest are reported, and what constitutes a conflict of interest, AI usage, which we've already talked about a bit today at the conference, the nature of authorship and contributorship, how we define who has been part of the construction of an article and how we credit them and keep track of and provide credit for people who've worked on academic publications, how research ethics, the process of conducting your research, and the kinds of strictures that have been put in place by grant funders and other institutional bodies that may have been contributing to research intersect with the publication process. And then plagiarism, and of course, and relevant to this particular group, how working with student publications and student publications themselves have unique ethical needs, and also the kinds of policies that might be necessary to develop when you are working as editors or publishing student work.
All right, so I'll talk a little bit about how to use the module as an administrator. Sometimes you don't need to engage with a piece of learning with the goal of having a project at the end of it. So I would say if you're the type of person who really loves to create projects for yourself, maybe hold off for a minute and just read the module and take it in, and maybe have a discussion with a colleague who's also reading the module. We both had a really good time writing it. Oh, no, you can go on, that's fine. And learned a lot. So just as a learning tool, it's really, really helpful. Now, with that caveat, some of us do really love projects. I think that's definitely a commonality in people who work in publishing. Definitely is for people who work in libraries. So, if you are on the lookout for a new project, think about how the module can support something that you're already doing now. Is there a policy that you really think you might need that you don't have yet? Maybe the module can help you with that. Does the module have anything to do with conversations that you're already having? Would it be useful to have a more structured conversation about the ethics of a particular topic, like plagiarism, like AI usage? The module can help you with that too, by providing like some common language and some resources for discussion. What are your users asking for? What is your editorial board asking for? Can the module help inform those conversations? And again, can it help with policy development? Or, can it help you say no to something that you don't have the capacity to support or that goes against your ethics? An example of this might be, are people asking for AI tools to do peer review? Maybe you don't want to do that because an AI tool is not a peer, really, right? So the module could help you develop a policy that makes it easier to explain your stance on these kinds of things. Can any parts of the module help with any sort of onboarding of new journal staffers? One of the big challenges with running a journal is for everybody to have a sort of common baseline about things like policy and have a basic understanding, a shared understanding of like the technology of the platform. And can the module help you with that? Potentially, yes. All right. So just remember, the module doesn't exist in a vacuum. And I know you're talking about a lot of these resources today, and you probably know about them, but here's a handful of additional resources that you can use in concert with the module to do any of these projects that we just talked about, and just help inform your work as a journal staffer.
So if you are a student journal staffer and you're interested in using the module, we also have some advice for you. So we would similarly recommend that take a look, read it to see what you might be able to get out of it. But you could also use the module as a way to start a conversation with your journal supervisor or publisher. And we want to always remind people that policy work is best done in collaboration and is never one size fits all. This is especially important in the realm of ethics because, like we've discussed, it is a process of developing consensus, right, around what we consider to be good and bad behavior. So the development of policy should be reflective of, what our values are as a group and what we, decide is important to us and how we want to moderate and, control behavior as a group. And what we should also keep in mind is that as student journal staffers, there may be questions that we can't answer on our own, and that's why this is a great conversation to have in collaboration with a supervisor or journal publisher, and think about those as people who can provide some of that input about what community consensus is in your professional and the professional realm of the discipline that your journal publishes. But also, it's not just for student journals to think about, reaching up and out to supervisors, but that we, cannot, each journal doesn't exist in its own bubble. We can't answer questions on our own because we want to be understanding, sort of what is going on in our discipline and in the wider publishing community. So we should always be looking up and out, and the module can perhaps help with that by highlighting some of the current thinking and consensus around these topics, and also directing you to resources and other publications. We recommend before starting, audit your existing policies. So, look at what your journal currently has in terms of policies. Are there things that are missing? Are there, things that haven't been updated in a very long time? Consider specific events or situations that occurred in the last publishing cycle. So, were there several instances where, things didn't go well with peer review? Were there instances where, plagiarism occurred and you didn't know how to handle that situation? Have you seen a lot of materials come in that appear to be utilizing AI technologies and that's not cool with you? And so that might help you to direct attention at developing or updating policies to address the areas where there's the most need, and help you to think about where you're going to spend your time. And you can look at examples from professional or other student publications in the same disciplinary area, research and review relevant policies that intersect with your journal. So we want to help you to understand what some of the key ethical concerns are for publications through the module. But that doesn't mean that, you just have to, use our module. There should be an engagement with policy work that's being done by peers in your field, and think about that as a place where you should be putting time and effort in addition to using the module as a starting point. While drafting, our module is going to have a variety of series of questions and worksheets to help guide discussions and policy development. We want you to use this as a tool for developing your own policy language that reflects your values and workflows as a journal. So part of this, the construction that Esther and I have decided on, which is based on sort of a model of helping you to ask questions and start conversations with each other, as opposed to providing, here's some text, use this, right? That you want to create policies, draft them that really represent, what your journal stands for and how you actually want to deal with ethical issues. And when you adopt new policies, we want to emphasize that changes should always be communicated to relevant staff and, if necessary, authors and community members. So, putting statements about changes in policy and updating those and including the dates that policies were changed on your journal website and in internal documentation, and keeping records of these discussions and the dates when new policies were adopted. Sometimes questions about misconduct or things occur years after things were published, right? And so keeping records of the standards and policies that editors and authors were subject to at the time of publication can be valuable in understanding how we might act in allegations of misconduct. Oh, and that is the end for us. I believe that there might be time for questions if people have them, or I didn't know if you want to handle those at the end of the. Yes, I think that we may have to say goodbye to Esther, though, who is heading off to another meeting.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
And we do have Esther's contact information here. So if people have a specific question for her that I'm not able to answer later, you will be able to get in touch with her.
I have a question for Esther. You talked about this idea of professional consensus versus morality. Can you maybe give an anecdotal example of what good behavior would be considered versus bad behavior? And you don't have to name names or specifics, but just what are those standards? How do they differentiate? What does one look like versus the other?
Yeah, I guess like I'm what I wanted to convey with that is that like different disciplines have um different ethics, like to put it really broadly. So we see this a lot of the time in our program with student journal editors having questions about like what sorts of policy they should have around AI generated content. And in some disciplines, like having an AI tool write the content of an article is like very much against the professional ethics of that field. And, they pretty much would say like no, don't do that. But in other fields, like what is considered the most important part of the article might not be like the narrative piece, it might be like the data piece. So they might have different sorts of standards around like using AI tools to either put together the facts or edit the language in some way or even like do translation work. So that's sort of what I was trying to convey with that. But does that answer your question?
Yes, unless anybody else has a follow-up on good and bad behavior. Doesn't seem like it. Okay, perfect.
I think one other aspect of this is the differentiation between what we consider to be sort of like a community consensus and our individual. Um, so to use the example of AI again, I think that, there, regardless of sort of how you feel about it in relationship to your own practice, I think some people are very sort of staunchly anti-AI, but there's been a growing acceptance of, the role that AI might play in academic research or in publishing going forward. And so people who, sort of feel morally opposed to it may have to accept or, participate in the adoption of AI disclosure as a way of creating transparency around the use of AI, or to allow AI to be used in certain ways, perhaps to generate accessibility components or figures, but not to actually write the text of your articles. And so I think that there's some need to understand and accept and sort of as a publication and as like a group within a publishing academy and community to adopt what we consider to be sort of like a broad ethics framework as opposed to what we believe in and might want to practice in our own sort of like personal morality. And there's sort of a difference between those two things.
Okay, another round of applause for Michelle and Esther. Esther, we'll say goodbye. Thanks for your time.
Thank you
And
so much.
we will continue on with, I believe we have Jordyn and Kenna joining us next. Okay, so Jordyn and Kenna are representing the Harbinger from Texas Tech University, and they're going to bring us back into the fold with fostering community on campus and beyond presentations. Welcome, ladies.
Hi everyone. Sorry, allergies. My name is Kenna Billings, and I'm the editor-in-chief of the Harbinger Journal at Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas.
And I am Jordyn Ramirez. I am the former editor-in-chief and current graduate student advisor for the Harbinger Journal. And we are excited to present Boosting Voices and Building Community, outreach methods for student publications, and share some of the outreach methods that we have utilized and how they've helped rebuild our journal and possible ways that other publications could use them. For some background, Harbinger started in 1956 at Texas Tech University, originally accepting submissions in poetry, fiction, nonfiction, occasionally art and photography, and plays. In its 70 years, we have been working to expand the scope of those submissions and reach of our journal. We are a journal that primarily serves the undergraduate students at Texas Tech. We have occasionally featured graduate work, but we usually just feature undergraduate work. We are also entirely student-led. We have an incredible faculty advisor, but our journal is created by the hands of students who volunteer and dedicate their time to this journal. Our submission window typically opens early in the fall and provides about a 2 to 3 month span for students to submit their pieces. And then from there, we spend December through March editing those pieces and planning the layout and all of the design elements of that, and then publishing it towards the end of the semester. When COVID happened, the Harbinger lost its momentum and its progression, like most things, because submissions were lost, printing was shut down, a lot of factors involved. So in 2022, Harbinger was in the process of rebuilding, and there were 4 people on staff, the editor-in-chief at the time, myself, and 2 others. And of the 4 of us, we were responsible for doing the entire editorial process on our own. And by the end of that year, we were able to publish this journal that you see right here, that had the submissions that were uploaded during the time of COVID, and then also the pieces that were submitted after COVID. Since then, we have continued growing, and we have grown from being a staff of 4 to now being a staff of 40.
So since this session and our presentation is about outreach, we wanted to first remind ourselves why outreach is so important for journals like ours. For us at the Harbinger, our motto has always been embracing student voices. That's our mission. And so the more students we reach, the more diverse voices we can showcase in our journal, which is always the goal. And by diversity, we mean that we're looking for students with different majors from different fields of studies, different ethnicities, students with different interests, and different worldviews. So from 2023 to 2026, we've been growing our number of submissions, which is awesome, as you can see. The 56 number in 2023, we did have a few like repeat submissions, like people filling out the form twice or multiple times. So that number is a little bit lower than 56 actually, but nevertheless, we have grown in submissions in the last 3 years. And while we don't formally collect data from our submission pools over the years, the data that we found we could easily access for this presentation is the percentage of English and creative writing majors that have submitted to the journal, which is typically the bulk of our submissions. But we are trying to expand to different majors, as we said. And so, as you can see, the percentage of English creative writing majors has been decreasing also since 2023, which is awesome. This is what we want. So obviously we love our creative writing majors and English majors. They're a huge part of what makes the Harbinger possible, and they submit obviously great work. We're not trying to hate on our English majors at all, but we would love to see more perspectives in the journal because a student in architecture is going to have different experiences and different ways, a different style of writing. And so these majors that you see here on the right side of the screen are all majors that were represented in this year's past submissions pool. So anything from political science to several different types of engineering majors to biology, like pre-med students. And so as you can see, we're really happy that we've been getting a little bit more able to represent the students at Tech more holistically. And so we're going to talk about some outreach methods that have helped us to do this.
So first, we shape our journal around the types of submissions that we get. So we typically accept things in fiction, drama, nonfiction, poetry, and art and photography. However, we don't limit ourselves to those genres. We shape it around the courage and the vulnerability of the writers who submit to us. For example, we have recently been trying to partner with the music department at Tech to get students there to submit their creative pieces or even original compositions that they may be working with. Additionally, a couple semesters ago, we had a student who was an art major, mainly focusing on jewelry making and that kind of craftsmanship. And she wanted to find a way to submit her work in a way that fit within our journal. And so we had talked with her and we were able to submit some really cool photography options of the work that she had created. So, as we have developed as a journal, we have used a couple different types of outreach methods. These include class visits, workshops, partnering with other organizations at Tech, multiple different modalities of advertising, developing professional relationships, and our launch party events.
So firstly, class visits and professor partnerships are a big part of how we boost submissions and get word out about the journal. So, yeah, their main purpose is to increase awareness about the journal on campus. Typically, we've gone to creative writing classes because those students already have pieces that they're working on in those classes that they could submit to the journal. So even if they're not necessarily creative writing students or like as a major, or if they haven't heard of Harbinger, if we come and present this opportunity to them, sometimes the students are like, well, I already have this piece that I'm working on. Why not submit it and see what happens? So for class visits, we're working on making a standardized slides presentation that we can just share with all the editors because we like to have the editors go in person and deliver these presentations to classes because we think that this in-person connection is so important, especially for students who have never heard of Harbinger before. We want them to see us in person, and we want to explain why they can trust us with their work because a lot of the times, a lot of the work we do as a publication is very much just online, sending each other the manuscripts, and we want to get out on campus more so that people can actually see that we're like a real journal and real people behind it. So with the class visits, we would love to expand to more non-English classes. So already we do a little bit of art classes, photography classes, and theater classes. We would love to do music classes, like Jordyn was talking about with the music compositions, and also especially honors college classes, which I will discuss more about our partnership with the honors college later. Reaching out to professors is also a great way that we found to boost submissions, especially in genres that we have low submissions for in a particular year. For example, this past year we were low in nonfiction submissions, so I personally reached out to two professors who I knew were teaching nonfiction workshop classes and asked if they had any students that they really enjoyed their work and thought that they would be good candidates to submit to the journal. And this is a super great approach we found because we're getting multiple levels involved with the journal. We're forcing the professors to think about us and which of their students could be published by us. And also the students become more confident to submit because they have that vote of confidence from their professor saying, I've seen your hard work. I really love your work and this piece, and I think that it would be great if you submitted it for publication. So, yeah.
So, as we kind of mentioned, submitting your work to a journal requires a lot of vulnerability and courage to have others read your work, analyze your work, and then possibly publish your work. And that can be a very intimidating endeavor for students. So, we began hosting workshops during our submission window so that students could come get feedback on their pieces, as well as, again, see the faces behind the journal. We host these events in our English building currently, and we also provide a virtual modality so that our online and distance learners can also join us and still have an opportunity to work with Harbinger and get their pieces submitted. Students would enter our space and work with one of the editors, typically the one who is over the genre that they're writing in, but kind of just depending on availability. And then they would just kind of talk through their piece, get feedback on what the editor is thinking, ask any questions that they might have, and just again, workshop their ideas for their piece. And we did a similar process with breakout rooms on Zoom. Our available editors would hop into a breakout room with someone who joined, answer questions that they have, Some students came to work on specific pieces. Some students just use this as a time to get more information about Harbinger and what we offer, because sometimes you hear about it, but you don't know all the details. So it's good to get the information from the source directly. And our come and go structure of workshops allowed students to maintain their agency over their work and how much feedback they got, as well as getting to experience all the different parts of the writing process and receive more information about the Harbinger.
Another way that has been a super fun way to have more outreach about the journal is partnering with organizations on campus. So two of the main ones are the Psi Delta chapter of Sigma Tau Delta, which is the International English Honor Society, and also Script Writers, which is a script writing club on campus. So with Sigma Tau Delta, we've been able to, they host a lot of events during the school year, and so we've been able to work with them on some events that are more geared towards the journal and our process. So events like Jordyn was just talking about, like the workshops, also common reader events. We've been talking about other joint events such as a poetry on demand table or just an informational session about Harbinger with some of those members. So these events are super beneficial because all of the members of Sigma Tau Delta are very like-minded. They're all pretty much all English majors or minors, and so getting to be able to talk with them about Harbinger has been just super, super fun, and being able to host those like fun events with them. And with script writers, Jordyn and I have both been in contact with their president over the past few years, just because typically drama submissions, play submissions, those are normally not very well represented at first in the journal, so we have to kind of reach out to them and ask, hey, like, do you have any scripts, any people working on scripts who would like to submit? And normally, they do get back to us with some of those, which is awesome. But this like partnering with clubs, it is so important to boost submissions, but also it's just super important for the community building aspect of it. By creating these joint events, we get to help out other clubs with their attendance. And we also get more advertising for Harbinger out there, which is a win-win situation and building community on campus.
Advertising is one of the best ways that we help get others involved. It's actually how we've established a lot of those connections with the organizations that Kenna talked about. And so we create posters for every event that we have, every deadline, and just general important information that we want to remind our student body of. At TTU, there are bulletin boards in almost every single building. So our editors will divide up some of the posters and make sure that all of the buildings have at least one so that students of all different disciplines can see Harbinger and the opportunities that it has to offer. We also share these same infographics digitally on our social media, and we send them to advisors, professors, and other staff members to share with their students to give them the information about these opportunities. We circulate these advertisements pretty regularly without overwhelming students, just to make sure that they can stay updated on what we're doing and they know when deadlines are coming up. We also make sure that on any event that we have, we do our best to make sure that there is that hybrid modality for our online students. And recently, we were featured in a by a national organization called Fuse, which is a national society for student editors, and they featured us on their website and their social media to allow us to share the word and get more involvement from other people and awareness.
Okay, so our partnership with the Honors College has been super beneficial, and we're very grateful for it. So we want to talk about that. The Honors College at Texas Tech is very much focused on multidisciplinary studies. They really encourage students. It's a lot of majority probably of STEM students, engineering, pre-med, all of that. And they're very encouraging of students to branch out and take different classes. They offer so many honors classes in so many different disciplines, and honor students are encouraged to go outside of their field of study. Jordyn and I can attest to that because I'm in the Honors College, and Jordyn graduated from the Honors College with her undergrad. So we know how much this is encouraged and emphasized in the Honors College. And so with that, we realized that Harbinger is a unique multidisciplinary opportunity for honors students who are trying to become more well-rounded students. So we've been fortunate enough to work together with the Honors College, and they've been super willing and helpful to make the Harbinger accessible to honors students. We built a good relationship with the dean through most of our staff being honors students or honors alumni. And we're very grateful to receive funding from the Honors College to support our journal in the last few years. So with this partnership, what it looks like is advertising for staff position openings, submissions opening, our launch party, advertising for these things in the Honors Weekly newsletter, so like those posters that Jordyn was just showing. Last semester, I even had the opportunity to be featured in this newsletter, as you can see there with the Honors Spotlight, because of my experience with Harbinger. So that was also a super great way to get the word out and get people to think about just Harbinger and what we do. And we hope to continue to use this partnership with the Honors College to reach students from a variety of disciplines, like we were talking about earlier, and get them involved with the journal.
And lastly, we also host launch readings. These launch parties are one of our favorite events that we do at the end of every spring, and we actually have one coming up soon next month to showcase this year's journal. And at these events, students get first access to our journal and they receive free copies. Our journal is always free, and it's also accessible on our website digitally. So that way, all students have access to reading it and just generally having access to seeing it. Um, these readings feature um, different people who have their pieces published, getting to share their piece, the inspiration behind it, and then also who they are as a writer. So that way, their voice is not only elevated through the publishing that we've created, but also through this event where they can share and celebrate this moment with other people. Sometimes we even get crowd involvement. One of our playwrights had written a play with two other roles, and members from the audience joined in. So you even got to kind of see their work come to life in that space. And family and friends are always invited to come watch this as well. So it's open event at TTU. And that's so again, these authors can celebrate their accomplishment of submitting their work and also having it published. And so all of these strategies are helpful in helping build journal awareness. 4 years ago, when we were working on rebuilding, it seemed super intimidating. And so these are our key takeaways for helping raise that awareness. So look local. There are many organizations in the community that and at universities that would be more than willing to support and partner on events for outreach. By gaining more awareness of other organizations and sharing in that space, we can work together to elevate participation and build a larger literary community.
Also, be courageous in seeking submissions and in finding channels to advertise. It's the classic, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. You could be surprised at who wants to submit pieces, and your journal will be richer in content the more diverse submissions you receive.
And build relationships and community. Establishing a literary community will help further expand the awareness of other students having about your journal and the opportunities that it offers. We are fortunate enough to have the relationships that we have at Tech and outside of Tech, and we are also fortunate to receive funding from a lot of the departments at Tech and work closely with the TTU Press to help bring this journal to life. Our ability to create and elevate student voices would not be possible without those relationships and the community that we have.
Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to our presentation. Jordyn and I are so grateful for this opportunity. We hope that you've been able to find even just a small takeaway for your own outreach practices at your home universities, and we're excited to answer any questions that you have in the Q&A.
Hi, everybody. My name is Emma Hurst. I am the editor-in-chief for Dewpoint magazine, which is our chapter of Sigma Tau Delta at the University of Alabama. And I'm here with Leah Jones, who is one of my assistant editors. And we focused our presentation on how to use creative writing as engagement with both on and off-campus communities. Next slide. So we're just going to start out with an introduction for why creative writing is really useful for this purpose. And We've gone through some methods of how to use it specifically for engagement, and then on-campus details of how to do that and how to do it off campus, and also just why this is important, how it's helpful, and everything within that. Next slide. So, why use creative writing for engagement? So, creative writing is normally a solitary act, but it's actually a really useful tool for building community, especially with things like workshops, writing clubs, and it also can help create new communities that are focused on creative writing. It also establishes a shared connection between individuals through sharing writing that you've worked on by yourself. And it also just provides a lot of new opportunities for engagement through different methods. Next slide.
Some methods of engagement that Emma and I have talked about are libraries, technology, and activities. Libraries are a huge resource on campuses, and they offer spaces for you to get involved and engage. With rising technology advancements, it's important to know how to utilize those tools and gain more opportunities with them. And with our activities, like Emma mentioned earlier, doing things with workshops are one of the ways that we can help bring people together. Next slide. All right. Libraries are public free space. On our campus, we have 3 libraries. And we have plenty of resources between printing, access to computers, or meeting with specialized librarians on finding topics. Libraries are typically in an accessible location, and of course, there's lots and lots of books. Next slide, please.
So for technology, I think as most of us know, technology is super useful for both the writing process itself, but also especially for community aspects. So, you know, with technology, we're able to share our writing very easily, especially with the editing process. And with on-campus writing clubs and communities, technology is essential. We need it to both communicate club meetings, schedules, but also to share our own documents and manuscripts. And so it's essential to be very pointed about engaging with that, especially with on and off campus community engagement. And so there's also lots of online tools available for writing. So workshops that are online, scheduling tools to schedule club meetings for writing clubs, writers guilds, things like that. And there's really just so many opportunities to take advantage of that, especially with an on-campus organization with things like, simply email or just group me, really taking advantage of that to build a broader community. Next slide. So here's some activities that we put together for general ideas of what you can do for a writing-based organization. Readings are a great one. So just organizing a general reading for whatever publication it is that you're working on. So libraries are a great place to do that. We have the Tuscaloosa Public Library here in Tuscaloosa, and sometimes they do offer to let writers clubs on campus host their readings at the library, which is super awesome and very helpful. Like we mentioned earlier, the workshops are a great way to bring people together to talk about their own writing, also, working together to improve their writing with maybe people who are more seasoned writers. Having a prompt night can also be a great way to engage the community with the writing process, with things like putting together a series of prompts to get people started on their writing. I find that that is really helpful for bringing people into the fold that are not as used to the writing process or people who have never written creatively at all. Having a prompt can be a really great way to get people thinking about things that they can write and just learning how to be creative with it. And then publications. So This does depend on the interests of the group, but publications, even if they are small, are a great way to have a common goal for a group, and just bringing people together to work on that. Next slide. So,
Sorry.
you go.
Some of our on-campus engagements that we have specifically on campus is Redwood Press, an undergraduate-run publication. They just had their launch party for 2 new books that they're publishing last week. Dewpoint, which is what me and Emma are over. It's run by undergraduates, a part of our chapter, which is the Phi Xi chapter of Sigma Tau Delta. Writers Guild, they meet every Tuesday in our English building, and they host prompt nights and different activities and have often partnered with Tuscaloosa Library to do readings. Mars Field Journal is also undergraduate run, and they take all mediums of work, and they publish digitally and with print. They haven't announced their launch party yet, but I know last year they had one. And Space is also undergraduate run with slightly more of an academic focus, but they have started taking more creative pieces. And the launch party for that was Wednesday night, I believe. Next slide. And for our off-campus engagement, as Emma mentioned, we have Tuscaloosa Public Library. We have multiple partnerships with them with writing and other aspects of volunteering for getting on campus. We also have Kentuck Art Festival, which is more located in Northport. They offer open mic readings and different forms of artwork with pottery and paintings, which is really cool to see. And working with local schools, offering creative writing contests, workshops, and even visiting schools close to campus is a great way to engage more with creative writing and show students what the university that they're living near, what they're all about, and how they can get involved.
So really, we just wanted to highlight how a lot of times, especially with a university like the University of Alabama, there are so many different resources, especially off campus with things like libraries and art festivals, and how with fostering engagement, it's really important to take advantage of those opportunities and build relationships with different organizations. So with Dewpoint Magazine, we do have relationships with the other on-campus publications at UA, and so that really helps with bringing together the writing community at UA to bring awareness to students about all of the different publications. And so just in general, there's so many different ways to use creative writing specifically to create these communities. And it also just really encourages people to write creatively and have that opportunity to work with other people and not just have to work on their creative writing alone. And a lot of these methods can also be applied to different art forms and activities. So whatever university that you're at, there are surely people interested in not only creative writing, but also different other methods of art. And so you can similarly take advantage of the different resources at your university and also in the surrounding area. And yeah, we just hope that these ideas are helpful for everyone's publications and that it can really help you foster that community both on your school's campus, but also in the surrounding area. And we are so grateful for the opportunity to be here, and thank you.
The first question here we have is, I'm so fascinated by your acceptance of art that isn't written. The jewelry was very cool. I'm just wondering how you plan to accept musical submissions. Would it be sharing the sheet music, embedding an MP4 file into the EPUB, or some other modality? And I believe that's for the team at Texas Tech.
So We are still workshopping that idea, so we are kind of open to whatever the Department of Music would best like for us to do with stuff like that. We originally envisioned the sheet music aspect of it, but I do really like the idea of including some kind of music file in our digital version of it so that people can also hear them. So we are still workshopping that for our next journal starting in the fall, but I think that it would be really interesting to see what our music people come up with.
Awesome. Did you have anything to add, Kenna?
No.
No, she covered
Yeah.
it. I have a question for you guys, and it's almost a little bit of a push and suggestion too. So the teams between Texas Tech and University of Alabama, you guys have a lot of the same ideas rolling. You talked about workshops, you talked about writers guilds, open mic nights. You've also talked about you sourcing local businesses for some of your outreach. Is there openness and willingness to kind of co-collaborate with other universities, whether that's virtually or locally? Or is it more so a process of you want to keep your intellectual property just to your own institution?
I think at least for Dewpoint and the University of Alabama, we would be very open to working with other universities. I think that's a great idea, and I think just the main challenge would be logistically figuring out how to do that, whether that would be like some kind of collaboration effort or how we would do that, just because we're in different places. But yeah, I think that would be a great way to showcase, you know, different areas of students and their work.
Yeah, I agree for sure. I think we would be super open to that. And I think Harbinger, we do a lot of virtual stuff. And so I don't know, maybe something virtually, also locally. Yeah. And I was excited to see that you guys are under your side or not side Sigma Tau Delta because yeah, we've done a few things in our chapter with like virtually with another chapter like in Indiana. So like yeah, I think that could be super cool, something like that.
What we call virtual networking. If anybody has a question in the audience, you'll start raising your hand. Can you get there?
Hi, I'm Barry Devine from the Rock Creek Review at Heidelberg University. This question is mainly for the Harbinger team, but anybody can answer this question. And I'm trying to translate some of your outreach strategies from a school with what do you guys have, like 35, 40,000 students, to our school, which has just under 1,000 students. So which of your outreach strategies do you think have been most effective for getting non-English majors to submit work?
I think there's probably two that have been the most effective. I think our launch parties have probably been one of the most effective because they're a fun event. People might have like their friends who have been published, so it's a good way for people to kind of network with each other. They hear about it by word of mouth, which is one of the most powerful ways for people to share information. But then also our partnership with the Honors College. A lot of the honors classes are STEM based, are science based, and so we get a lot of outreach with that as well. So kind of just working with different departments, I feel like would best serve any university, no matter the size.
Yeah, I was also gonna say the honors college probably for sure, but if your university doesn't have like an equivalent, maybe just reaching out to like departments, like putting up flyers in other departments' buildings or stuff like that of more like non-English majors.
Awesome. We have another question in the chat. How are you balancing your regular schoolwork with all of the journal work and commitments that you all have?
It is really hard. It is a lot of work, I will say. I was fighting with InDesign a lot this spring, yeah. Um, but I think it's really helpful that we do a lot of it virtually, I think, just because with people's schedules, it can be a lot more flexible. I actually, in the fall, this past fall, I was studying abroad in Brisbane, Australia. And so I was like 16 hours ahead of everyone else. And so that was like definitely a challenge to figure out meeting times on Zoom, but we still made it work, which I think is really great. And just yeah, I think it was really just because like it was all virtual and more easier to manage. And we have such a great team of like genre editors as well that are super helpful with everything and could kind of be my feet on the ground over here, like getting posters hung up and everything like that. So yeah, it's hard, but it's fun. So
Going with like what Kenna said, it is very difficult. When I was editor-in-chief, I was student teaching at the time, so I was also trying to balance a lot of different things. And we do have a great staff who is very good at delegating. We're good at like sharing the responsibility, and we also establish a timeline at the very beginning of the semester that allows us to know when certain things need to be met for our publication to be printed on time, and then we can all kind of use those deadlines to help us plan around with our schedules.
We have a question in the back, middle back.
Hello, everyone. My name is Victoria King. I am a student at Hampton University. And my question is more so for the ladies of Texas Tech, but anyone is welcome to answer. How did you work on building up your team? Right now at Hampton, we are struggling with maintaining a large team, and y'all have a very like powerful amount of people. So I wanted to know how you got that growth to that amount of time.
I think a lot of it began with just advertising. Since we started with 4 people when we were rebuilding in 2022, it was a lot of asking advisors, asking professors, like, do you know anyone who wants to go into publishing? And just kind of sharing that information. Our application is typically like a Microsoft form or a Google form, and using that to like share with other people. I also work at our university writing center, and so I would put a lot of our information in there to help kind of circulate that information with people who were working there or coming through there. It took a while to build us up to 40 people, but gradually over time, as people hear more about us, know more about the opportunity, we're able to establish a bigger staff. Um, and like kind of just communicating what those expectations are very early on.
also, this is more of like a practical thing that I just thought of, but Jordan and I were just talking about this because our launch party is coming up, and like we said, that's a really good way to get a lot of people there and a lot of people to know about the journal and like see it and be like, this is cool. And so at the launch party every year, we try to, at the end, we say, hey, we just opened our applications for staff for next year. Here's this QR code to fill out this form. So like fill it out if you're interested, if you like what you see and you want to like be a part of this. It's a super cool opportunity. And so I think that's also been really helpful because it's kind of hard in the fall semester when everyone's kind of just coming back to school and trying to like figure everything out to like have that, like try and be like join one more thing this fall while you're already in 50 other, things for the first week of classes or whatever. So,
Yeah, I have another question for you guys about just your outreach and your advertisement. You mentioned that you do class visits. I'm just curious of like how often you're doing that and like what those consist of.
yeah, typically we do those in the fall semester right after we open submissions. So we normally open submissions in like October and we'll do, I don't really know how many we do. We just kind of try and email a bunch of creative writing professors who we know are doing workshops and see if any of them get back to us. And also something that we do is we encourage all of our editors to, if they're currently in a creative writing class or some sort of lit class or something, to just ask their professor, like, hey, can I just like give a little spiel real quick at the start of class about like Harbinger and like, um, yeah, what it's all about and stuff, and like encouraging people to submit, which has also been super helpful because then it's like a classmate and like a peer who's like advertising this to you. So it feels a little less like scary or something.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? No.
I have a quick question before we go to lunch. So you mentioned that you do some collaboration or partnership with the Texas Tech Press. Can you describe that? One of our former students, one of our graduates is an acquisitions editor there, Kelly Robbins. So I don't know if you know her, but can you talk a little bit about your collaboration with the press?
Yeah, so at Texas Tech, There is actually an internship option to work with the press. Kenna and I have both done this internship during our time as Harbinger editors. I did mine prior to being a Harbinger editor. But our faculty advisor is actually a professor in the College of Arts and Sciences for the English department, as well as a member of the staff of the TTU Press. So she kind of bridged that relationship for us, and they provide us with a lot of guidance throughout the printing process. They help us consider a lot of different elements that we did not have knowledge of before. We did not know that there were so many different types of paper that you can print your journal on. And so they kind of help advise that. Our faculty advisor helps proofread. Typically, sometimes if there's time within their schedule at the TTU Press, they'll kind of read through it as well. And then their designer at the TTU Press always gives us a lot of help. As Kenna said, we fight with InDesign frequently. And so they always give us a lot of good feedback and information that helps train our upcoming designers as well as us as we kind of navigate the different parts of InDesign.
Thank you. And Leah and Emma, I know you mentioned Red Rook Press, and they are going to be speaking tomorrow, and they do have a relationship too with University of Alabama Press. And let's give a shout out too for University of Alabama, because they have 4 journals. We've got Abigail here from Ripple Arts Review, and the Crimson Historical Review will be speaking tomorrow, and Red Rook. So great work from University of Alabama.
I just have one more for Michelle, who's sitting here, kind of bringing back the conversation to what you said. You and Esther were talking about kind of DEI sitting at the center of some of that module work. How have you seen that change recently? I know for GW, we've restructured what our DEI values look like within the last year. So have you seen that change at your own institutions? And then how are you applying those changes to the module? How often do you have to update, what have you? And if you guys have any policies at your journals that you want to talk about that maybe you've seen shifted, or you've had to come up with some creative solutions to still get the vulnerability and the creative of the voices that you're trying to include. We want to hear from you too, but first, Michelle, if you want to answer that.
I mean, so at our institutions, and granted, so Esther at Columbia is still managing the program that I ran when I was there, which is a open access journal publishing program. It has just over 30 open access titles, all levels of faculty and professional publications, graduate, student, and undergraduate. I am not as aware of what the situation is there in terms of how the university leadership have been sort of structuring or impacting the way. I'm not sure how they've been impacting that. I know that there have been a few subtle title changes that have happened at my library. One of the things that we always emphasized, though, was that these are publications that are published by the university. We have a relationship and sort of a duty of care in terms of the stewardship of the content and the advising of the students. But we always were very supportive of students developing their own policies, mission statements, workflows, et cetera. And I think that for student publications, like the representatives and the rest of this panel are representing, I think that it's important for students to feel ownership over their publications and to have their policies and mission statements and communities reflect their values. So, if you are in a situation where university administration or your publisher or, an advisor is, pushing back on some of the language or ways that you want to describe your community or, the things that matter to you or the kinds of policies that you want to use to shape your workflows and the way that you interact with your community. I think there is a lot of support from the professional publishing community. If you're not finding that support in sort of your faculty advisor or, an on-campus body, that there are resources like the Library Publishing Coalition, like the Society for Scholarly Publishing, like folks that you can find working professionally in library publishing or in other spaces who can help you to think about advocating for those and know that there is a general sort of feeling in the publishing community that independent or individual publications should feel empowered to represent the values of their disciplinary and home communities, and that's something that people should feel empowered to do.
We haven't made any changes specifically. We let our submitters write whatever they want, and we try not to censor them, and we kind of just shape it around that. And our faculty advisor kind of gives us guidance if there's anything that kind of raises concern. But yeah, we're still kind of in the process of developing. I believe that Michelle, y'all talked about like AI and plagiarism and how that ethical part influences journals. As that becomes more present, we're kind of working on ways to combat that with our journal, but we haven't found one way to do it yet. And so, your presentation gave us a lot of insight on things that we should use going forward.
Personally for our journal, we haven't had to make any changes. I know 2 other publications on campus did have to do name changes and separate themselves from our university because they were discontinued because of the changes. But luckily, we have such a strong community with our alumni and just everyone who loves Tuscaloosa, really just coming together and help funding them to be able to publish those 2 journals. So I'm really thankful that they still have the opportunity to express how they need to, and also that we're all working to figure out all these new changes, and hopefully there's not much that anyone else has to change or be discontinued like those other 2 journals. But yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Any other questions from the audience? We're going to wrap it up. Thank you again, everybody. Round of applause for all of our panelists again.